strengths of all the non-contenders.
Oh, yeah.
Fair way to explain it. I have the American League. Arm has the National League. Quick reminder. We aren't like, for example, the Twins are on this list. The Rangers are on this list. There's some guys that you have in the National League. We don't think that they are completely non-contenders. Later in this offseason, we're going to do previews. We're going to do predictions, and you're going to see what we truly think about these teams. But right now, the exercise that we did when we did biggest strengths and biggest weaknesses of contenders were based on Vegas's win totals of 80.5 or higher. Yeah. These are just all the teams that are 80 and below. So don't come after us thinking, oh, well, this team is a contender for this and this. We might agree with you. We also might not. That's the joy of doing this and talking baseball all the time. So I'll start in the American League. And so what we'll do, I'll go one team, Aram will go the next team, and then we'll just go back and forth.
And I want to clarify again too. I will do my best to not forget a team. And if I forget your team, it is not because I have anything against them. So I don't think I'm going to forget a team this time. I will be on it. I got my notes in front of me, but I already addressed it with Jack. I have no ill will against the very, very good Fighting Alex Anthopoulos over there in Atlanta. So let's get into it.
Just baseball show listeners, he doesn't like the Braves at all, but we'll move on. The Baltimore Orioles. I'm going with their infield. I think it's kind of the clear strength of this team.
Yeah.
You look at, depending on what they're going to do with Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, which is crazy. We still don't really know.
Yeah, we still don't really know. But he is going to be one of the better infielders in baseball, I think, this year. I think he's going to be the front runner for AL Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm. And he's got the hair and he's got the power. He's got everything that you'd want from a shortstop or a third baseman. How about the catcher, Adley Rutschman? Maybe would have won the Rookie of the Year if J-Rod didn't look like Ronald Acuna Jr. or if Ronald Acuna Jr. was 6'3". So you have him at catcher. At first base, Ryan Mountcastle, if they didn't move left field back what felt like 50 feet, I think he could be a guy with 40 home runs. But Ryan Mountcastle seems like he's been in the league now for a while, but he's only going to be 26 years old.
Yeah.
Like, he's a really good guy. Ramon Urias won the Gold Glove last year at third base. They also have Adam Frazier there at second base. Like, this is a good infield, but what puts it a step above is that they have so much depth, right? They got Jorge Mateo, who was a really good shortstop for them last year. Like, they have guys who they can now put at these different positions, and they have plenty of prospects who are going to come up too. I think the easy strength here for the Orioles is this infield.
Yeah, I would say Jorge Mateo is probably one of my favorite for Sixth Man of the Year award if they don't start him at shortstop, because this guy had a great second half. Look, is he going to hit with the best of them? Probably not, but he's going to steal 30 bags and he's going to play elite defense at short. So if they want to go with Gunnar at third and then put Mateo at short, great. You got a Gold Glove caliber shortstop. But Urias, like you mentioned, Gold Glover at third, Gunnar is a good shortstop. I ultimately could see them mixing and matching this in a way where you end up getting Frazier out of the lineup. I think he's the weakest link. We'll see how they do it. We'll see how they figure it out. Obviously, they signed Frazier and promised him close to every day at bat. So I don't know what their plan is. I don't know why they did that. But Jordan Westburg coming up is a really, really good offensive prospect. Connor Norby, really, really good offensive prospect. Both those guys raked in AAA last year. So, I mean, they could have three guys go down, and I still think their infield is their strength. Though the outfield is not bad either. Obviously, the pitching far away from being good. But, I mean, this is a really good infield. I think of all of the weaker teams, quote unquote, this is a really good strength.
Oh, it's a really good strength. What about a trade, Mateo and a prospect for Trevor Rogers on the Marlins?
No shot. Well, it depends on the prospect.
Oh, we already did this. I mean, it was no shot for the Pablo Lopez, Luis Ariz trade.
Joe Mack was not happening.
I understand that. But Mateo and a good prospect?
Yeah, I don't think the Marlins can trade pitchers anymore. I don't think the Marlins can trade pitchers anymore.
They just got Smeltzer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I don't know why they don't package him with a prospect and try to go get an arm. Like, they have so many ways to go get an arm, and they won't. But that's whatever they're doing over there. I trust the process over there in terms of their front office, but that's about it.
I agree. I trust the process. Just wish they would spend money or maybe go get a starting pitcher. National League East, your first team.
Yeah, so starting in the National League East, we'll talk Marlins then, and it's obviously got to be the rotation, right? I mean, this Marlins rotation is not only their strength, I think it could be one of the better rotations in baseball if everything's clicking. Yes, you subtract Pablo Lopez, but you add Johnny Cueto, who's a good depth piece, on top of the reigning Cy Young winner in Sandy Alcantara. You got Jesus Luzardo, who was dominant in his kind of return from his injury, looked really, really good down the stretch. He could be a legitimate number 2 or 3 starter. Edward Cabrera, we know how good Edward can be and how nasty Edward could be if he's healthy. That's another guy that could really flash frontline ability. Then you have Trevor Rogers, who was the Rookie of the Year runner-up, took a big step back last year, but still had some good underlying numbers. I think we'll take a step back forward this year. Maybe not all the way to what he was his rookie year, but if he's somewhere in between, that's a really good arm for you. And then they've got Yuri Perez, a top 3 pitching prospect in baseball who just got invited to big league camp and could be up pretty early. And they have Braxton Garrett, a left-hander who looked really good last year in about 10 or 12 starts. And I think could be a really, really solid depth piece for them as well. So they've got top-end talent and they've got depth. I really like what they've built there on the pitching side, even with the subtraction of Pablo Lopez.
No, I totally agree. I almost think there's no question about the starting rotation. My only worry is with the Marlins. We were talking about this in the Just Baseball office about 2 hours ago. After these pitchers, the bullpen that comes in after them is weak. But I mean, this is a group of guys, especially Sandy, who can give you 7, 8, 9 strong. And even, guys like Edward and guys like Jesus Luzardo, like they flash ace stuff. Like Trevor Rogers, even at his peak, I never saw ace, but I got to say, I see ace when I see Edward Cabrera and Jesus Luzardo when they are on. They are guys who turn in 6-inning, 2-hit, 13K type performances. And you don't just get that from guys often, and they can do it multiple times. It's just about staying on the field for this unit.
I mean, dude, Luzardo literally ended the season against the Braves with 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 12 strikeouts, 1 walk. I mean, and he struck out 11 2 outings before that. So I mean, this guy, when he is on and he is healthy, like he's got frontline stuff, and he was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. So big X factor for them is, can Edward and can Luzardo stay healthy? But the good news is at least they've got some depth with Braxton Garrett and Yuri and Jake Eater and other guys as well. So it's a really solid rotation. I think Cueto was a nice little depth pickup as well.
Smeltzer.
Smeltzer's going to see some innings this year.
He's going to see some innings. That'll be fun. The Boston Red Sox certainly don't like their team on this list, but they're projected 76.5 wins. They make this list. They have a pretty good infield. I would say that's their biggest strength. I think there's obviously some questions up the middle with Alberto Mondesi, with Kike Hernandez now moving from center field to shortstop. At least that seems like their plan. But on the corners, you have Rafael Devers and you have Tristan Casas. And Reese McGuire, when he came over to the Red Sox, actually played pretty well. Now, is he more likely a backup on a good team? Yeah, but he's still a fine catcher, especially at a position that's really weak. We could see him being in the middle of the pack of those type of guys. So up the middle, there's some questions there. There's no question with Mondesi's talent. When he's on the field, this guy is, I mean, like he could be a guy who hits 20 home runs and steals 40 bases if he stays healthy, but he just hasn't proved that.
Yeah.
And then Kike Hernandez is a great player, but how will he fare at shortstop? But it doesn't get much better than Devers. And then you have Tristan Casas, who is as good of a slugger in minor league baseball we saw last year. And we saw him in a brief stint in the majors, didn't really look overmatched. I'm really excited for what he's going to do this year. But so we know that the infield is the strength for the Red Sox. I want to ask you about your thoughts on the trade for Alberto Mondesi, because the Royals didn't really have a spot for him with the, of course, emergence of Bobby Witt Jr. there at shortstop. Yeah. Now he's probably going to move over to second base. The Red Sox didn't really have to give up much, and they get a lot of upside in Mondesi. Yeah. What were your thoughts on the trade?
No, I like the move for them. And also, like, they're just trying to buy some time until Story gets back. And I know Mondesi might not be ready at the start of this season, but I agree, first of all, that the infield is a strength because they've just got a lot of different options, right? I mean, you've got the 2 corner guys in Devers and Casas, like you said, and while they don't have the best middle infield right now. I think Kike Hernandez is solid. And then, they've got a lot of guys that you could plug in and can hold it down. Like Christian Arroyo is no slouch off the bench. Again, if Mondesi's healthy, like that's a dynamic player. They're going to get Story at some point this season. I think Justin Turner will play some first base when Casas has a day off or Casas goes to the DH role or whatever it may be, or if there's a tough lefty and they don't want Casas to play. But they give up Josh Taylor for Mondesi. That's not an arm I think they're really going to miss that much. I like the Royals stockpiling arms. They went and got 2 arms for Michael A. Taylor, who we're going to talk about as well. 2 relievers that I think could be interesting. But for the Red Sox, I think they needed this roll of the dice, because if Mondesi is somehow, that 3.5 win player, and I think it's more is if can he somehow play 100 games? If he somehow plays 100 games this year, that's 100% worth it for them, right? Like they got him for pretty much nothing. They desperately needed somebody like him. I think it's a great roll of the dice. And if he can be anything close to available this year, that he's going to be one of their better and more dynamic infielders aside from, at least middle infielders, I would say, until Story comes back.
Yeah, with all due respect to Josh Taylor, like he's a guy who you could replace in the bullpen and bring up someone from the minor leagues, and he's not really somebody you're going to miss. And even if Mondesi doesn't even pan out, let's say he plays 50 to 70 games, I still think it's worth it. Yeah. And then if he plays 100, it's way more than worth it. I'm telling you, like Mondesi as a talent is a very good player. He's maybe this is mean calling him like the Walmart version of Byron Buxton in the way that they both get injured. They both have crazy amounts of talent. Mondesi doesn't have the talent that Buxton does, but you see similarities there where when they are on the field, the talent pops. Like Mondesi's got it. It's just about staying on the field, but there is no debate about the Devers Casas combo. And that's like what makes this infield so good is that they're pushing Justin Turner, a career third baseman, a career great third baseman, to the DH role. That's why he doesn't even make this infield, because they have such solid corners.
Yep. And I mean, Mondesi, dude, 133 stolen bases in 358 games. He stole 43 in 102 games in 2019. He stole 24 in 59 games in 2020.
Yeah, I'm sure when I said 20 home runs, 40 stolen bases, that made people think, whoa, no way. He could, if he stays healthy and has a great year, that's the talent that we're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, he had 14 home runs in 75 games in 2018. So he could easily be even on the low end, 15 home runs, 45 bags. Like even if he only plays 110 games. So he's a great talent, and you get him for nothing. I like the pickup, and definitely helps solidify this strength and fill in a hole for the Red Sox. It's a relative strength, but you weren't going to mention the rotation or the outfield, where if they're moving Kike in now, they got to figure out some outfield stuff too, because I don't trust Jarren Duran. I don't trust Adam Duvall playing every single day out there. I thought it was better for him to move out of center, so that they've got some stuff to figure out in the outfield.
Yeah, like I like Yoshida, I like Verdugo, but I like the infield a little bit more.
Yeah, more star power.
Washington Nationals.
Yeah, this was a hard one. When a team is just kind of all around bad, it's hard. I was deciding between the infield and the rotation. The rotation could be sneaky good. Ultimately, I went with the infield, but Josiah Gray was once a very, very highly regarded prospect. He still just turned 25. Long ball burned him last year, but he still struck out a good amount of guys, still has good stuff. Cade Cavalli, again, a guy that's a top 100 prospect, really talented, could be good. Mackenzie Gore, we know his story too. And then Trevor Williams is not a slouch, and Patrick Corbin is the sacrificial lamb, as Jack likes to call it. But that's not the worst rotation in the world. But ultimately, I think it's the infield that's going to be the most intriguing for me, because I think there's too many question marks in that rotation. When you have an infield that is athletic and has some guys could make a big leap this year, right? At shortstop, you got CJ Abrams, who has all-star potential. At catcher, you've got Keibert Ruiz, all-star potential. At third base, I think one of the more low-key acquisitions of this offseason was the Nationals getting Heimer Candelario. That's a guy that can hit, man. Maybe getting out of Detroit, he could be a 25 home run guy and be more productive. And then another bounce-back candidate in the form of Dom Smith. Look, I'm not as high on Dom Smith. I don't know how good he's going to be, but this is a guy that's hit at the big league level before. And then Luis Garcia, 22 years old, man. Like, this guy had decent numbers last year as a 21-year-old that was kind of rushed to the big leagues. He could be an above average big leaguer. Look, the bar is kind of low, but what was I going to pick? Their outfield of Victor Robles, Corey Dickerson, and Lane Thomas. I already told you why I wasn't picking the rotation, and the bullpen, not going to happen. Infield has the most pop potential, and that's enough for me.
Luis Garcia is a guy I think a lot of Nationals fans are excited about. I mean, he's really, really young. CJ Abrams, of course, he came over in the Juan Soto deal, and Nationals fans should be really excited for his future. I know he's a guy that you really, really love too. And I think everyone, once they see him on the field, they see the speed, they see the overall athleticism, they see the bat to ball. Like, there is a lot to dream on with a guy like CJ Abrams. But Luis Garcia, I don't think a lot of Nationals fans are expecting him to come up and play pretty damn well. And I'm excited to see what we get from him, because he can also play some shortstop too, but should be located in the second base position next year. I'm excited for what we're seeing. So, like, I think we said it when we described each team in 3 words, or wherever we kind of did that, we kind of summarized the teams, like, just go out there and have fun. Like, this could be a fun team, especially with a guy like Joey Meneses maybe coming into the fold at a first base DH position too. Like, they have some fun guys that I'm excited to watch. Like, this isn't going to be a Nationals team where the Nationals game comes on, I'm like, ugh. Like, the A's are a lot different. It's like they have some fun guys that I'm excited to watch.
And again, on the pitching side, like, I'll tune into Mackenzie Gore. I'll tune into Cade Cavalli. And also Thad Ward might start for them a little bit too. He's pretty nasty with the slider. He's fun to watch. So if Thad Ward was in the rotation, I don't know what they're going to do with him yet. I think they're going to start him as a reliever and build him up. If Thad Ward was in the rotation, I might lean rotation. But again, it's that pop potential that CJ and Keibert specifically have that is enough for me to go with the infield.
That's fair. Minnesota Twins, their infield is freaking stacked.
It's nasty.
I know that, again, similar to the Red Sox, similar to the Orioles, they don't want to be located on this episode. But the reality of the fact is they're projected for 78.5 wins. They make this list. It's kind of different from the National League, where the National League, it seems like, all right, these are kind of the bottom teams, where the American League, like, there are some good teams that are kind of middle of the road and could make that leap. And I do believe the Twins could. Correa at shortstop, one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball. You gave him the big deal, and we don't have to go over the injury stuff because we've gone through it in like 50 different episodes. That's what the offseason is about. We've talked about it. You could probably look at any of our last episodes and find more information about that. But Carlos Correa, when healthy, assume he's going to be, is one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball. Jorge Polanco moving over from short, where he just didn't really make it at the position, wasn't that good defensively at shortstop, now moves over to second base, is a real power threat. I mean, this guy at his peak can hit 30 home runs. Like, this guy is a very good player. Then you got Jose Miranda at third base, who came up and showed his potential of a guy who has hit in every single level of the minor leagues. And there's no reason why we shouldn't expect the guy to have a 450, 470 type slugging type of year with 25 to 30 bombs. Like, he rakes, and he is going to be 25 years old. He's still 24 years old right now. And Alex Kirilloff, I kind of want to lay the table for you, because you've been an Alex Kirilloff guy now for a while.
I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up,
because you see the talent. It's just about staying healthy. And then you put in a guy like Christian Vasquez at catcher, who is what I think to be a top 15 catcher, very solid. And you have Nick Gordon at DH, who I'm not including in the infield, but can play up the middle for them. And they have a guy like Kyle Former backing them up. We've talked about the Twins at length, but looking strictly at this infield, it's freaking loaded.
Yeah, I mean, even the catching tandem, like Jeffers as a backup is a really good backup. I think they upgraded their catching tandem. I think, of course, you subtract Arias, but they didn't really, like, I don't think they're going to feel it that much. Like, it's such a good infield, and they're going to get Royce Lewis back in. I don't think Royce is going to play the outfield, man. I really think he's going to predominantly play the infield. How he gets those ABs, I don't totally know. Maybe if, Kirilloff is hurt or struggling, they move Miranda to first, and then Royce plays a little bit more third. He was getting some action there, at some points last season. They can mix and match, but Royce coming back in midseason 2 makes this infield even more ridiculous. I think Miranda is going to rake, like you said. And then, Carlos Correa is one of the best shortstops in the game. This is a really good infield. It's funny to put them in this conversation of not contenders, because I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid of the Minnesota Twins, like, especially with the Pablo Lopez addition. They were never going to have an elite rotation, but at least have a rotation of a bunch of solid arms. And I think they're pretty much knocking on the door of that at this point. A bunch of arms that you trust to a degree to give you quality starts more than they don't. The bullpen's a question, but they've somewhat addressed it a little bit. And then the depth that they have overall is really good. But yeah, this infield has a chance to be really powerful too. Like, that's the exciting part. Like, they could have across the infield, guys hitting 20, 25 home runs. And that's a really, really fun team.
It's funny. The White Sox made our contenders list and the Twins make our non-contenders
Yeah,
list.
which it
And
just
I'm
shows you
more
that like
excited about the Twins.
way more excited about the Twins. That just shows you that we're literally basing it on win-loss totals, on Vegas projections. This isn't our projections, and we probably deem the Twins more contenders than the White Sox, at least from my perspective. I won't speak for you, but that's where I'm at.
I want to hear Jack's perspective. All right, next team.
So now, do you want me to go to the Central or the West?
Central,
since you went to the Central. I'll go with the Pirates. And with the Pirates, there was a few ways I could go, but I don't know what they're going to do with one of my favorite pitching prospects in their system, Luis Ortiz. Quinn Priester probably not going to be up just yet. So while I think the pitching could be exciting soon, it's got to be the infield for me, because there is some really fun star power on the left side, especially if I'm talking about Ke'Bryan Hayes as one of my favorite breakout guys next year. Then I got to talk about this infield, because if Ke'Bryan breaks out and O'Neal Cruz even reaches 60% of his potential, that is a really freaking good left side of the infield. Then you get to the right side. I know like roster resource has Rodolfo Castro, who's no slouch. He's a good bench bat, but I think Ji-Hwan Bae should be their starting second baseman. I think he will be their starting second baseman. He is a very, very solid prospect who has plus speed. I mean, he swipes bags with the best of them. Sneaky power. I think he can hit you 10 to 15 home runs. He's a great defender, and he doesn't strike out. I think he could actually be an above average player in his rookie season at the second base position. And then go get Ji-Man Choi, who, he's all right. I think if you platoon him with Connor Joe, who when he's on, he starts raking pretty well. You platoon them, that's not bad at all. And then they get Austin Hedges at the catching position, which doesn't get me the most excited, but he's going to frame really well and call great games. Look, this infield's not great, but maybe Carlos Santana plays a little bit at first as well. If G-Man doesn't do well, and Santana's going to walk his way to a 103 WRC plus. So this infield is solid. It's much improved. This Pirates team is sneaky decent. But I like what they've got going on here, and that left side could be elite if both of those guys reach their potential next year.
So I am curious. I've heard, you and Jack also talk about on that most impactful rookies list, and I hear you guys talking about Ji-Hwan Bae, and it's hard not to get excited about a guy like that with the ability to play multiple positions and the ability to just put the bat on ball consistently. But I almost feel, because of the love for Ji-Hwan Bae, we are kind of underrating Rodolfo Castro a little bit. Like, I think Rodolfo Castro is like a pretty decent second baseman, because with my betting last year, I found myself, especially at the end of the year, because I looked back and I looked at a lot of the teams who I bet on the most versus bet on the least. And it's funny, the Pirates, for most of the season, I barely had bets in there, but weirdly, towards the end of the year, I was on a lot of JT Brubaker starts. I was on a lot of Mitch Keller starts. Luis Ortiz was a guy that I was tailing, whether it be an under or an over. So I caught the tail end of the Pirate season. I felt like I was watching 3 to 4 games a week. Like, that's how much Pirates baseball I was watching. And Rodolfo Castro kept coming up in the lineup. And it may be just happenstance. It may be just the games I was turning on. But Rodolfo Castro would always come through. Like, he has some power.
He had a good second half.
427 slugging percentage last year, and that's with a bad kind of start to the year. Like, I think he's got a lot of talent. He's got this moxie about him. He's got he's got the swag. He's
got the phone in his back pocket.
He's a fun guy to watch play baseball. Like, I think while Ji-Hwan Bae, I agree with you guys, should be the starting second baseman, this is a very fun player. Kind of like he's not the same as Luis Garcia on the Nationals, but just like a guy that I'm keeping my eye on. Like, I think he's got potential.
He's kind of like Rengifo, I think. Like, people don't give Rengifo even his respect. Well, Rengifo with the Angels had a good year and has some power, but really good in the second half was Rodolfo Castro, 119 WRC plus, did slugged a little bit, 788 OPS, can play all over.
Sense. I watched,
but he hit. Yeah, that's when you watched.
Yeah.
But he hit lefties really well, and it's a small sample, but I could see a platoon, because Ji-Hwan Bae is not great against lefties. He's a left-handed hitter. 148 WRC plus against lefties was Rodolfo Castro, and then Ji-Hwan Bae hits righties better. You could have a platoon of 2 guys that can play all over the infield. That only makes it better for me. But again, we're talking about one of these guys is going to be on the bench, and that's a really good bench player. So this infield is definitely pretty solid, all things considered.
It is. We do have this common theme, and I think I mentioned it earlier in the episode, that infields are kind of taken over on these teams because, you know, a lot of these teams are rebuilding and a lot of their best prospects are shortstops, and we're seeing them come up, whether they be third base, second base. And that's the same for the Kansas City Royals. Their infield is their strength because you have Bobby Witt Jr., who is 22 years old, and in a perceived down year, he was 25. This guy is, or was he 20, 30? He was something in that range. This guy steals bases, hits home runs, and will one day, and maybe it's next season, maybe it's the season after, be one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball. And we can't shower praise over Vinny Pasquantino enough. You look at this guy's peripherals, and he could hit 30 home runs while, you know, having an OBP in the 360 to 370 range. That's how good he could be.
Yeah.
And then at third base, you have Hunter Dozier, who, you know, I mean, he's not flashy, but he's all right.
Yeah,
he's got fine. Michael Massey, who's
I love Massey.
Yeah, and he's, you know, not even 25 years old yet. Just a good baseball player, kind of a grinder type player. You know, he's not going to flash 20, 25 home runs, but, you know, he might hit 10 to 15. He might steal 10 bags. He's going to get on base.
Great defender.
Yeah, and he's a great defender over there at second base. And then at catcher, you got Salvi, or you got MJ Melendez. So overall, like, this Royals team, I'm worried about the rotation. The bullpen is not bad, actually, weirdly enough, where, you know, even the addition of Aroldis Chapman, we'll see how he does. But the outfield is certainly not something that I'm, you know, drooling over with Drew Waters, Olivares, and I mean, who's in
Kyle Isbell?
Like,
Samad Taylor,
like straight up terrible. Like,
no, it's bad. Honestly.
But the infield, I am excited about, no doubt about it. Like, Hunter Dozier is the only player in this infield I'm not excited about, and he's still fine.
And Nicky Lopez, look, he can't hit much, but he's one of the better defensive infielders you're going to find. That's a potential bench guy for you. Like, that's really good. The Salvi MJ mix is awesome offensively. We'll see how MJ progresses defensively. I know he's been working on the defense. I think Vinny's going to be one of the best offensive players in baseball this season. Like,
we love him.
I really think he's going to be that good. And I've been like really hyping up Vinny for years now as a prospect that just never got the love, but he is even exceeding my expectations as someone who put him on the top 100 list before anybody else. That's always been a big Vinny fan. I never thought he'd even be this good. And he really is impressive in terms of all, like you mentioned, all the underlying data. It's really, really intriguing. And then he just watches at bats. He commands them. He controls them. He looks like a vet up there. This infield's good. Like, this isn't just like a good among the bad. This is a good infield. Of course, I agree with you. Like, Hunter Dozier doesn't get me super pumped, but he's not, you know, a total slouch. And again, you've got Nicky Lopez off the bench as an option as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they move somebody else into the equation, and maybe Lopez gets more at bats if Dozier continues to struggle, because he isn't the best defender in the world. So we'll see how they use him. But I do think this infield is good.
And they also have Nick Pratto too. So with Vinny, because you made a claim right there, and I want to unpack it because I agree with it. But you've been on this guy, and this is not something where, you know, now you're taking credit. Like, I have been hearing Vinny Pasquantino come out of Arm Layton's mouth for years now, and he's finally starting to get a ton of love, kind of a lot of mainstream love now, because people go into the, you know, the data, and they think to themselves, well, this is similar to some of the best hitters in baseball. And if he puts it together, he really could do that. We're not just being, you know, hyperbolic. We're not being crazy here. Like, what about Vinny Pasquantino shines through for you, and why have you been on this guy now for so long?
It's the combination of frequent contact and hard hit rate, right? Like, this guy doesn't swing and miss, doesn't expand the zone, and hits the ball hard. Like, it's that simple. He's almost like a baby Jordan to me. 6'4", 245 pounds. He really does not whiff. I mean, I'm talking 97% zone contact on fastballs last year. That would have been among
in perspective for some of our listeners who may not really know what zone contact is. Like, who is in that echelon?
Jordan, Mookie, I mean,
it's a short
Nick
list.
Madrigal. It's going to be guys that are either super contact oriented and have zero power, or some of the best hitters in the game. Right. So You don't see that. That's probably, I don't have a leaderboard, but in terms of on fastballs, that's got to be among the best in Major League Baseball last year. I would say that without a doubt. 91% zone contact across all pitches, like 80% is average. 79, 80% is average. So if you're a power guy, some power guys are at 75%, but they hit the ball so hard, it's fine. And that's just percentage of pitches in the zone that you're making contact with.
And he doesn't.
91% is silly. And then when you're 90th percentile exit velocity, which is just basically how hard you hit the baseball and how frequently you hit the baseball hard, is 106 miles an hour. You have a combination of a guy that makes contact at an elite rate and hits the ball in terms of how hard he hits it at an elite rate. You combine those two things, you have one of the best hitters in baseball, personally, I think. And I think we're going to see that this year.
And if you don't know what Vinny Pasquantino did last year, so Vinny Pasquantino, he had 298 plate appearances last year. He hit 10 home runs. He slashed 295 with the batting average, 383 with the on base, and a 450 slug.
As a rookie.
This guy will rake. Fantasy baseball people, listen up. People who buy into baseball cards, anything like that. Like, this could potentially be one of the best first basemen in Major League Baseball. And we're not kidding. I want to make this clear. We are not being overzealous here. Other big vocab words. We're not doing any of that.
No.
We believe in this kid.
Yeah.
And we think he's going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch him. And if
the Italian breakfast. Italian breakfast.
If he sucks, blame us. I don't know.
Yeah, I will wear that happily. I'll be shocked if he's sub 900 OPS next year.
Wow. Yeah. Sub 900 people.
Yeah.
That's how good he could be. All right. Yeah. Next team.
I hope Royals fans, I don't know how many of them listen to us, but I hope we made their day on that one, because I really do stand behind that. Cincinnati Reds. This is a really fun rotation, man. I really am excited about the arms that they have rolling here, right? Of course, we've got Hunter Green, the hardest thrower out there. You got Nick Lodolo, who is another guy that just is so awesome. 25 years old and just got better and better and better and better as the year went on, and he looks like an ace. So you got two guys that could be ace type starters next year, two top 10 picks. Then Graham Ashcraft is a really good 3 who showed well, and I think is perfect for Cincinnati. Gets a lot of ground balls, just a really, really solid arm. It drops off after the top 3. There's no doubt about that. Luke Weaver, who they acquired, who they signed as a free agent, comes in at the 4. I actually don't think Luke Weaver is the worst pitcher in the world. And then their 5 might be Luis Sessa. I don't know who their 5 is going to be necessarily at this point. They do have Brandon Williamson. They do have Justin Dunn as a potential option as well, who I think could be solid if he's healthy. So the other options that they have give me enough hope that they can figure something out on the pitching side between Justin Dunn, Brandon Williamson, Levi Stout. They've got some other guys in the minors. I think Andrew Abbott could be up relatively quickly. I don't think it's going to be the 4 and 5 combination of, what we're seeing in roster resource as long as we think it's going to be. But even then, I think Luke Weaver could be okay. But the 1, 2, 3 of Green, Lodolo, and Ashcraft is just too good with this team. It's just too solid. And yeah, they've got a sneaky decent offense compared to previous years. But for me, I got to roll with what they've got in the rotation.
And people, because everyone knows Nick Lodolo, or maybe not everybody knows, but you should know about Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green for the Cincinnati Reds. They kind of what I said about the Marlins, about Edward Cabrera and Jesus Luzardo, they flash ace stuff. There's a difference between being a good arm and flashing ace stuff. Both of them have done it, especially Hunter Green. The second half really found his command and was just nasty. Not gambling advice, people. They know about the over strikeouts. He was nasty. And Nick Lodolo, same with him too. But the one arm that I want to focus on is Graham Ashcraft, because Graham Ashcraft had a 4.89 ERA.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most bogus 4.89
yeah.
I've ever seen. Because if you watch him pitch, he is disgusting. He's got a cutter. He's got a sinker. He doesn't allow you to put the ball in the air, but for some reason, he allowed balls to be put in the air last year. But when you look at the repertoire moving forward, you don't think that's going to be a guy who's going to allow liftoff. Like Graham Ashcraft, I thought when I watched him was like a 3.5 guy, and you look at the stats and it's completely different. I think that he is going to settle in. He had a couple of outings where he gave up, 8+ runs. Like he
Yeah.
just got blown up and just didn't have that large of a sample. So the ERA looks bloated. Like you look at the rotation and you see, yeah, they got two good guys at the top, but who's this Graham Ashcraft guy? Watch out for him because he is a good pitcher with really good stuff.
Yeah. I think he might be more of a 3 or a 4, but like he should be getting way more ground balls. And I guarantee he was working on that in the offseason. I mean, this guy with the fastball is 97, 98. It's a little flat. So I'm sure he's been working on the shape a little bit. And then his like cutter it's that kind of gyro Emmanuel Class A type cutter. It's not as nasty, but it has that type of downward bite to it. And that's how he gets the ground balls. I think he's got to find the command of that a little bit better and get more comfortable with the fastball. But when you can reach triple digits with the fastball and have the cutter that he has, like he had some really, really good starts last year. And then he had some blow up starts. I think he's going to find that middle ground, be a high 3s, low 4s guy, which is, really solid as your number 4 starter potentially in Cincinnati. And I think Justin Dunn, I still believe in him as a 4 or 5 type. I still think he can be a solid arm. Again, the rotation is not the sexiest. You could make the case for the infield, especially if Tyler Stevenson's healthy and Spencer Steer is as good as we think he can be. But I don't know who they're going to play at shortstop. Ellie De La Cruz is too far away. I don't like Jose Barrero. I think there's a little bit, and Jonathan India took a step back last year. Joey Votto was pretty brutal and banged up. I think the rotation is going to be their biggest strength.
I agree. I think it's either the infield or the rotation. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think you could have made a good argument for both, especially with my love for Spencer Steer. Like if I had the National League, I probably would have just picked the infield because Spencer Steer is in it, and he's my favorite player that nobody knows about. All right, the Detroit Tigers. I got to be honest. The more I look at the Tigers team, the more I think this team could be with the A's, with the Nationals. And you look at the rotation, and without Skubal and Mize, like it is barren. And then you look at the offense, like who's going to hit? And I find myself looking at Kerry Carpenter as the best hitter on this team. But you can't say Kerry Carpenter is the best hitter on this team when they do have Riley Green in the outfield. And that's why I'm going with the outfield as the biggest strength for the Detroit Tigers.
That's the correct.
Riley Green in the outfield, he's 22. This guy will be a very good player. He's one of those prospects that I remember you ranking, and you were just singing praises about how high the floor is. Like, I think the Riley Green we saw last year will be the worst Riley Green we ever see.
100%.
He's still a very, very solid outfielder. And even if he doesn't hit next year, he's still going to be good defensively, but I do believe he's going to hit. And Austin Meadows, when healthy, is still a good hitter.
Yeah.
Like, if we're looking at projections, he's going to be a 750 OPS guy who hits 20 home runs if he stays healthy. He's a good right fielder, and he's still 27 years old. And Akil Baddoo, another guy that feels like he's been in the league for a while for some reason, but he's 24 years old. And he, he's projected to steal 17 bases. He's going to hit probably 10, 15 home runs, maybe at the max. It's just he plays in Comerica, so it's so hard to hit home runs there. But he's
moving the walls in.
They moved the walls in, so you could see that 10 to 15. I wouldn't be surprised there. And he gets on base enough to be relevant. He's a decent defender out there. He's not a hole. This is a good outfield, right?
It's not bad. And Matt Vierling is a 4th outfielder, solid. I think Matt Vierling's a solid 4th outfielder. I think Kerry Carpenter rakes. I think Kerry Carpenter's going to put up a really solid season. Like could be close to the 800 OPS range. I agree with everything you said about Riley Green. He was 21 years old on a disastrous team with no hitting philosophy across the whole organization. The whole team couldn't hit, 21. And he was playing in Comerica. Like it was a culmination of a nightmare for him. And also, you got to debut in like 20-degree weather and get used to hitting that as a kid from Florida. Like there's a lot of difficulties there for him. I really am excited to see what Meadows is going to do. This guy was a 4.5 win player, and even more recently, still was a 2-win player with just the bat, right? Like it's not a great glove. So this guy could be that mid 700s, high 700s OPS guy, especially with the walls moved in. This outfield's not bad. Like even across the whole league, like it has the potential to be technically above average if Kerry Carpenter is what I think he can be, if Riley Green is what I think he can be, and if Austin Meadows is healthy. Vierling, again, is a dynamic athlete who plays phenomenal defense out there. And Baddoo, it was a lost season for him. This is a guy that's had one of the more unique journeys that you're going to see, right? I mean, he had played 29 games above low A, was left unprotected in the Rule 5 draft, was such a freak athlete that the Tigers said, let's give him a shot and see what happens. And they push him straight to the big leagues from low A. And he put up a 110 WRC plus in 2021. Then whatever happened last year, again, I think they had a contagious disease spreading across that entire team as it pertains to hitting. This guy can come back and still be an average or better hitter. So I like what they've got going on there. And I think there's a lot of upside in that outfield, which is all you can ask for a team that is fully entrenched in a rebuild.
Agreed. Chicago Cubs?
Chicago Cubs is infield for me. And it's specifically the middle infield, because I think this could be the best defensive middle infield in baseball. Nico Horner was already an elite defender at shortstop. Now you move him to second. What's he going to be? Maybe the best defender at second base or among the top three. I'd put a lot of money on that. He also raked last year, right? And then you add Dansby Swanson. Yeah, Dansby Swanson might not put up the year that he put up last year. That's fine, because if he's still a 4-win guy, I think Nico Horner is going to be a 4-something win guy. He just was at shortstop. That's a really solid middle infield. And again, I think Nico Horner takes that leap offensively too. I'm not saying he's going to hit 30 home runs, but he took a big step in the right direction last year. And I think he's going to continue to do that. The only thing that was missing for him was he didn't walk at all, but he still hit 10 homers, 20 stolen bases, 11% K rate, hit 281. This guy can really play. You put those two guys up the middle, that is one of the better potentially middle infields in baseball if you really consider the defense the way that I consider middle infield defense. Yes, you could make the case for the outfield with Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki. I think that's a pretty exciting outfield, and of course Cody Bellinger in center. But I just don't really think that much of Cody Bellinger. I need to see Seiya do a little bit more, and I need to see a little bit more from that outfield as a whole. But if we had to pick whole outfield or whole infield, then it's probably more of a discussion. But I had to just specifically highlight the middle infield because I think not only is it a strength for the Cubs, it could be one of the better middle infields in baseball.
I just think it was so funny too, because obviously you watch Nico Horner and you come away thinking this guy's a good player, right? He's a good player, but unfortunately we don't watch all 162 of the Cubs.
No thanks.
Yeah, they're a pretty entertaining product, especially with the winds blowing out of Wrigley. Those games, you want to watch those games. But even in the other games, I came away thinking this Nico Horner guy, he's really good. But from our conversations in the offseason, and even I think it was maybe the tail end of the 2022 season, talking to Justin Steele, talking to Ryan Helsley, like a lot of players feel that this guy is underrated, even where people are saying he's very good. Like it's the same thing. This guy can do everything. He can pick it with the best of them at shortstop, and now he's moving over to second base. He hits the ball really hard. He wreaks havoc on the base paths. He's just a very well-rounded baseball player, and I'm really excited to see him develop that next year and probably become a top 5, top 6 second baseman. Like that's what we're looking at. He's a really good player.
With a hot start, he could be an all-star at the second
agree.
base spot. I really think that's possible. And again, like it could be a cop-out since I said middle infield. If we're going infield versus outfield, it's close. There's a lot of first base options they have now with Hosmer, Mancini, and then Matt Mervis.
We'll just say Mervis.
Yeah, should be Mervis.
Well, let's pretend. But it's Matt Mervis, and we love Matt Mervis.
I love Merv. He's a rookie. I don't trust Morel. Yeah, I think he's uber talented. I just don't trust him. I would go, if we're going whole outfield, whole infield, I'd go with the outfield. But again, I cannot overlook that middle infield tandem. It's just too good and too fun. Like they're going to be a human highlight reel together next year. It's going to be really tight. And especially with the limitation of the shift, like these guys are going to be so valuable up the middle. So if I was taking the whole infield, I'd go with the outfield. But in this case, biggest strength has to be the middle infield, and I'm going to make an exception for the Cubs.
I think you could just say the infield because when your two best players are on the infield, like you're not going to come up and say, yeah, Patrick Wisdom is awesome at third base or, any version of their first baseman that you get. Like you'll probably get average first baseman play between Hosmer and Trey Mancini. That's enough to be better than that outfield. Like I almost say you could say the infield because of the middle infield tandem.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. So now I'm moving over to the American League West and the Texas Rangers. Again, may be a contender this year, but they're not projected to do so by the Vegas totals. This infield, similar to the Minnesota Twins, is loaded. Talk about a middle infield tandem. How about Corey Seager and Marcus Semien? And we've talked about this at length, especially in previous episodes. And I know a lot of people want us to go over some shift stuff and some players that we think will benefit the most from the shift. Corey Seager is the top of that list. Corey Seager, in my opinion, and I'm going to come out, and maybe I'm announcing this too early, but I'm coming out with my personal top 100 players list. It's very exciting. I'm writing it on justbaseball.com. I'm very excited to go over it, have people argue about it. My top 100 players list is coming soon. And you're going to see Corey Seager ranked really, really high, maybe uncomfortably high, because that's how much I believe in him. I remember when Jack, Arm, and we got into a debate of who should make more money between Correa and Seager. Now, this was completely before the Correa injury problems, and like, how could you ever predict that? We didn't know what was going on with a plate in his leg. But just from a playing on the field standpoint, I think Corey Seager is as good a shortstop as any in Major League Baseball. And then you have one of the best second basemen in Major League Baseball in Marcus Semien, and you have the Silver Slugger winner in Nathaniel Lowe. Like, just those guys is elite. And what Josh Young could do is become one of the better third basemen. Now, he didn't have a great start to his career, and he is 25, but I want to throw that over to you because also they have Jonah Heim there at catcher, really good defensively, showed some promise with the bat, kind of had some spurts there where he looked like the old Jonah Heim, but the new Jonah Heim, when he gets hot with the bat, can really swing it. Overall, this is a very good infield, but you've been a Josh Young guy, and I'm curious why.
I like him. I really do. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I just think the swing plays, he's just makes a lot of contact. He's too aggressive, and that's what really impacted him. Guys, big league arms just kind of took advantage of that, but he's got power. He's got an above average feel to hit, and he's just a smart player. That's why I think he's going to make that adjustment. He's just so used to being able to barrel everything that I think he was in swing mode a lot last year and trying to make up for lost time after the shoulder. He had a torn labrum at the start of the year, still somehow not only made it back before the season was over after getting surgery on it, raked in triple and earned himself a promotion to the big leagues to get his feet wet. So I think he could be a 275, 20 to 25 home run guy next year if he improves the plate discipline. And he's got 30 home run upside and in the tank there. Then you also have Mitch Garver as a backup catcher who, I think Fangraphs has him projected to launch like 17 homers this year. So if that's your backup catcher, that's pretty darn solid, especially with the defense you get from Jonah Heim. So even if Jonah isn't hitting, Garver kind of spells that with his bat. And then you hit the nail on the head with the middle infield. Nathaniel Lowe turned into one of the best hitters in baseball in the second half with how hot he was down the stretch. And then Ezekiel Duran can play outfield, infield, play all over. They've got other prospects that are knocking on the door infield-wise that I think could make an impact. But I believe in Josh Young at the very bottom being a 250, 260 hitter with 20-plus home runs. And you add that to this already super talented infield, that's more than enough at the hot corner, especially with that the above-average defense he can play.
And just to go back to Corey Seager, like he put up 4.5 WAR in his first season with the team when he was adjusting.
And he should have been better. And he should have been better.
And he should have been better. He was unlucky and the shift affected him the most. I think this guy could be a 6.5 WAR player. Like compete with the best players in Major League Baseball. That good of a player. I'm all aboard the Corey Seager train. I think he's going to be awesome in 2023.
I hope so. He's fun to watch. He's definitely
fun to watch. And Marcus Semien could have 40 home runs. This infield is loaded. Nathaniel Lowe, awesome. Just catch the ball at first base, please.
Yeah, that's all you got to do. And then we know he can do it with the stick. Diamondbacks for me now on the west side, right?
Your favorite team.
It's my favorite team, and it's going to be, I think, everybody's favorite outfield for a long time. I think their biggest strength, without a doubt, has to be that outfield. And even with subtracting Dalton Varsho, they still look really good in the outfield. Corbin Carroll, my number one prospect in baseball. He's 22 years old with plus power, 80 grade speed, and can really, he's going to strike out a little bit, but at the end of the day, he's got pretty close to a plus hit tool. You got Jake McCarthy, who was one of the most emergent young players last year, phenomenal defender, also just could put the bat on the ball, probably can hit you 15 or so home runs, can run, steals a lot of bags, really dynamic player. They add Lourdes Gurriel in that deal as well. So yeah, you subtract Varsho, but you add a vet who can just hit, man. Like, yeah, I think at the bottom, he's going to give you a mid 700s OPS. I think he could bounce back and give you a little bit more than that. They've got some depth pieces. I don't know if Kyle Lewis is really going to play much outfield, but he is a guy that's capable of playing a corner when you need him to. But when you have the outfield of Corbin Carroll, Jake McCarthy, and Lourdes Gurriel, on top of some of the other options that they could plug in there, I just think this is an extremely talented outfield that is only going to get better as the year goes on. So I'm really excited about what they have building out there from top to bottom. I love what they've done to add, somebody like Gabriel Moreno and some of the pitching that they have on the way as well. But I think there's no doubt that outfield is the biggest strength.
Just Baseball Show listeners, I have some advice for you. You end the workday, you're tired, maybe you have a beer, maybe you smoke some legal substance, and you're just laying in your bed. Go on YouTube and look up Corbin Carroll highlights. I'm telling you, Arm and I were talking about this in the Just Baseball group chat. He is so twitchy. He moves like few I've seen. And I'm not saying he is going to be one of the best players in Major League Baseball, but that, of course, is his ceiling based on the tools. But I'm just saying from a movement profile, he came up and was number 1 in sprint speed. Yeah. Number one. Corbin Carroll moves like a schizophrenic person. Like he's just, I don't even know if that's okay to say. He is so twitchy. He is so unbelievably twitchy.
I know he is all over the place. If you watch him, I have a video I'll send you after we finish recording. Like in the box, he's even like rocking back and forth, but then gets into his back hip, and he's just so quick with the bat. And what's crazy is he's 5'9", 170. That's his listed height and weight, and it's probably generous. He might be closer to 5'8". So you're like, how does this guy have plus power? The bat speed and torque that he generates, he hit in some very hitter-friendly environments. So, like, you could subtract 30 feet maybe off of this, but he hit a ball 481 feet last year. Like, that was in AAA. But, I mean, even in a hitter-friendly environment, we're talking about a guy with 80 grade speed. I don't care if he does that in Coors Field, right? Like, you're not watching some of the speediest guys, center field types, hitting the ball 480 at Coors Field.
Trey Turner can't do that.
Trey Turner's not hitting the ball 480 at Coors Field in games. We haven't seen it. Maybe he could. We haven't seen it yet. Like this is a guy that has crazy power too. Like I'd say it's plus for his size, with the speed, with the defense. We talked about who's going to have the better F4, him or Nimmo. I took him. It's a risk, but I took him. So that kind of puts things in perspective. And then Jake McCarthy's floor, man, like he's just going to steal you 20 bags. He's going to play good defense, and he's probably going to give you a 730 OPS or something like that. And guess what? That'll be a 3.5 win player. So they've just got a really good outfield overall, and I love balancing it out with the veteran in Lourdes Gurriel. But I agree. I mean, the twitchiness, how well Corbin Carroll moves, it is pretty impressive, and apparently makeup off the charts as well.
So a couple of things that, from watching YouTube highlights that you can see, and it's a limited sample, of course, but you know what Corbin Carroll does that I really appreciate? Because some guys have a lot of speed, but he knows how to round bags, right? He gets good angles when he's, running out a triple. Like the way he hits second base and the way he like cuts the corners.
Oh no, he's got it down.
Such a good player, and he's just so freaking magnetic. Just to watch, like you gravitate towards him. He's an incredible ball player, and I'm really excited to watch him. My last team, the Oakland A's, won't win many ball games, but they have an intriguing rotation. They do, and you're probably laughing. What's intriguing about Cole Irvin? Cole Irvin's not bad. Paul Blackburn, all-star. Refer to him as an all-star, please. Now, will he replicate that success? I don't know, but he's not bad. James Caprillion, not bad. Drew Rucinski, not bad. Shintaro Fujinami, we don't know, but he's 6'6", and he's coming over from Japan, and I think a lot of people are excited about him. Arm and I were watching video of him. Looks nasty. And that's not even including some of the young guns who they don't have listed on roster resource, including Ken Waldichuk, JP Sears, guys who they got for the Frankie Montas deal. Like, this is a pretty solid rotation. And if one of the guys goes down or somebody has a down year, they can plug and play some guys who will give them quality innings. I know Ken Waldichuk is a guy who you were really excited about coming through the prospect ranks. Like even JP Sears, like sometimes he gives you 6 innings, 2 runs, and you're like, how did he do that? And I'm like, yeah,
Kyle Moore.
Kyle Moore, another guy. Like
I like Moore a lot.
They have arms.
I honestly like if Waldichuk is not in that rotation, I'm going to be pissed because I think Waldichuk could be the best of all of the arms you mentioned. I think Moore could be better than almost all of these arms as well. So you have those 2 lefties in there. If any of these guys aren't good that you just mentioned, I think it's a pretty decent rotation given what this team is. I'd make the case that the bullpen could be all right. You got Trevor May, you've got AJ Puck, Danny Jimenez had a decent year. But overall it's just, not that great. I like the Zach Jackson, addition back when they added him. He's all right, but
he's all right.
ultimately, I think that rotation is going to be their strength, especially pitching in that ballpark. I think Mueller is going to be a really, really solid rookie this year. I think Waldichuk is a middle of the rotation starter. And then you've got the vets that they'll give you innings. And if Fujinami ends up being, something close to what the A's are hoping he can be, and he's been dominant, over on the other side of the world, this is a guy that could be pretty solid. So I think this rotation is decent. I don't think it's that miserable. And I don't think that they're going to be in the bottom 5 in baseball in ERA when it's all said and done, at least for starters. But we'll see. It depends how much they give Mueller and Waldichuk an opportunity there.
Big Cat kind of coined this term, Pardon My Take, where I think is one of the most genius podcasts that's ever been. Just hilarious. If you haven't listened to Pardon My Take, I don't know what you're doing. It's hilarious. He coined the term frisky. Maybe that's not his term, but he uses it in sports where it's the kind of teams that, they're instead of decent, they're going to be kind of interesting. And I think an interestingly decent rotation that fits the frisky mold is this A's rotation. Kind of frisky. Kind of like the Bears with Justin Fields. Yeah, they're probably going to get the number 1 overall pick, but there's going to be some excitement there. Kind of like the Nationals, kind of like the A's. Frisky. You like that?
I'll give you that. I'll give you frisky.
Frisky. What about your team?
Last one for me. Colorado Rockies, one of my other favorite teams. They're done. They're done. That was Bill Schmidt. GMs came out and said, we are done. We did everything that we needed to do this offseason, which meant, what was it? Adding Pierce Johnson and Jose Urania. That was it. That's all they needed to do. They're done. Oh, and Connor Siebold, of course. Can't forget Connor Siebold. That's it. They're good. They're covered. But this is a team that, look, they're going to draw top 10 somehow, and they don't have a singular strength that really stands out. I would lean infield because there's more warm bodies than the outfield. If Charlie Blackmon's playing in the outfield, that's a dead body. Randall Grichuk is a cold body to me. Chris Bryant, hopefully he plays. I'm worried his body's breaking down on him. Jonathan Daza was sneaky decent last year, but ultimately the infield is better, right? Ultimately it's better because I love Ezekiel Tovar. I think at the very least he's going to play you phenomenal defense at shortstop, but I think he's going to rake. Rookie of the year, dark horse, like we've talked about. Brendan Rodgers, we're waiting for him to continue to we've been continue to wait for this breakout, right? We've been waiting for it. He was still okay last year. Really polarizing splits from home road, but he cut down the strikeout rate, improved the walk rate. He was a 1.7 WAR guy last year, so he wasn't terrible. He's a good defender. Those are 2 guys up the middle that are going to play good defense and should carry their weight with the bat, have the potential to be very solid with the bat. Ryan McMahon, that's one of the best defensive third basemen in baseball, right? I mean, that's why they've kept him around for so long. Also, they're just weird. But he hit 20 home runs. He was a 3-win guy. So that could be one of the better defensive infields in baseball. And then, they've got a pretty good masher at first base in CJ Cron. That guy just hits bombs. I know it's at Coors, but he does what you're supposed to do in Coors, which is hit bombs. 28 home runs in 2021, 29 home runs last year. He drove in 102. This guy just hits bombs. I think he took a little bit of a step back last year, 126 WRC plus in 2021, 101 in 2022. But this is a guy that just hits. So I think this infield is actually could be an above average infield if they're middle infielders, if those youngsters take that leap next year, which is a big if, but I think they can do it.
CJ Cron's kind of like a slightly watered down version of Rhys Hoskins.
Yeah, kind
25 to 30. He's going to give you 100 RBIs. WRC plus might not be there. Rhys Hoskins walks more. Rhys Hoskins is a better player, but it's kind of similar. It's just a big slugger, first baseman guy who, is fine. Pretty good. Yeah, the Rockies, we make fun of them a lot. At this point, I'm just getting tired of it. It's just so uncompetitive, and it's so the same thing. And I just feel bad for Rockies fans because they drive attendance. Rockies fans go to the games. They're one of those fan bases that no matter what's on the field, they're going to go, and they want to watch good baseball. They pay the tickets. They pay the beer prices, and they have a gorgeous stadium. And I know it's hard to play on the moon, and that's why no pitcher wants to go there. And it's hard to develop talent. I know that. But at some point, it's like, do you move? Like, is this the excuse that we just can never get a pitcher? We can never do this. Our front office has no plan, and it's just going to be a bottom feeder forever. Like,
yeah, it's
they
like
got
accepting
Gabriel
the fate.
Hughes from, I think, what did he come from? UConn? Like, he looks like a good pitcher. But like, we'll see what he ends up being. Gonzaga, maybe. Yeah. One of those schools. But yeah, whatever. But he's a good pitcher, right? And like, we saw John Gray. They picked very high, and like, we see what's happening now.
They didn't even give him a QO. They didn't even give him a QO. So they didn't even recoup a pick for him. Like, there's just weird things. They run their franchise very bizarre. It's obviously a team and a franchise that's successful in the respect that they draw well, and it's a good sports town, which is the frustrating part. Like, I understand it's very hard to build a team when no pitchers want to come there and when it's very difficult to pitch, but lean into the strengths, identify the hitters that will be even better there than anybody else, right? Like, I know everybody hits better at cores, but like, there's examples of line drive, gap to gap guys that would be phenomenal there. Jeff Conine, for example, we've talked about, hit 400 there in like 130 games. Like, I ID those type of guys that are undervalued everywhere else and would absolutely eat there, like a CJ Cron. That was a guy that nobody wanted, right? ID more of those guys and start to build that way, lean into your strengths, find the right pitchers that fit the mold instead of just throwing shit at the wall and seeing if it sticks, right? Like a Jose Urania. Like I think they could do a better job at actually understanding what players and what profiles are impacted by that environment and then building according to that. Like, I just don't understand how it's just like, oh, our hands are tied. If we play on the moon, it's too hard. Like, that's how it feels with them sometimes. I feel like it's almost like there's no way to build a winner around here. It's too hard with the environment we play in.
And it doesn't feel that hard. We know fastball slider guys can work there. We know that the outfield is vast. Get some of the best defenders in baseball to go play outfield there. Then you load up with your infield. You don't need the best infield defense in the world. Hitters aren't even hitting the ball on the ground there. They're hitting the ball on the freaking moon. So just get big time hitters, gap to gap power guys, like you said. Fill your rotation with fastball slider guys, and you'll win 80 games. And I don't even think it's that hard. Like, am I being too simplistic there? It doesn't seem that hard. Like, we have a bit where we just make fun of them because they deserve it. And I'm just like tired of it. Like, I'm just tired of the same bullshit year.
I mean, I've never been making fun of them. I like what they do. I'm a big Bill Schmidt fan, but I think that's the frustrating part too, is like, you just wonder what their plan is, because it's like, okay, you signed Chris Bryant. Cool. All right. That's where you're spending your money. Like, they have money. They are spending it in spurts. Like, they never offloaded Charlie Blackmon. They paid him too. They're paying Randall Grichuk more than you think.
They extended Daniel Bard.
They extended a lot of money. So I don't understand what their plan is. And it feels like, to me, it's just like, fuck it. We'll just pay one guy here, keep the fans coming in, whatever. And it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. That'll do it for this episode of the Just Baseball Show. Get your Just Baseball merch. I'm rocking the hat and the tee, both available on the Just Baseball merch store. The Athletic long tee, sweatshirts, get those. Best way to support this podcast, get yourself some merch, or don't spend a dime. We would greatly appreciate you guys getting us a 5-star review, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We just hit over 1,000 between Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Really cool milestone for us. We started this podcast April 1st, 2021. We never thought we could get to here, and it's all because of you guys listening. Thank you again so much. We wouldn't be here without your support. We greatly appreciate it. Tons more content coming out on justbaseball.com. And it's funny, we went through the calendar and we scheduled the rest of the offseason, all the episodes. We got top 10s, we got World Baseball Classic, we got fantasy baseball, we got college baseball coming. We have full previews. You're going to find it on this podcast. You're going to find it on justbaseball.com. We cannot wait for the 2023 MLB season. We're going to break down everything before the season even starts with gambling stuff too, over under win totals, award predictions, World Series predictions, the whole nine. And with that, thank you, everybody.